Hello everyone, welcome to a new episode of Deep Dive into the Archive, where today we'll be diving into the record
Oil of Every Pearl's Uninsides by SOPHIE.
SOPHIE is a lot of things. SOPHIE is a producer, a singer, a songwriter. They're all sorts of things.
Music person. Probably best known for production work on especially this album, but appearing on many other projects as well, working with artists such as Charlie XCX is probably one of the more prominent ones.
Also Vince Staples. A lot of the production on Big Fish Theory was done by SOPHIE. SOPHIE tragically passed away recently this year, very unexpectedly. It's very shocking.
SOPHIE accidentally fell while trying to get a picture of the moon in Greece. Unfortunately, died from that accident, and just really kind of left a big hole in a lot of the communities where SOPHIE had just so much influence on, especially like the LGBTQ plus communities and the hyperpop community, those kinds of people. Just like really sad to see such a revered figure go, and so unexpectedly, so early.
I have to say this death like hit me way harder than like any other artist up until now. I don't know. I think it was just so like unexpected, I guess. Just kind of came out of nowhere. I also found out about it like really late at night. So I was not like, wasn't in the best mood, I guess.
I mean, it was me. I found out the next morning, and it was also devastating. I didn't believe it at first, because I was just like, what? How could that happen? But unfortunately, it was true. But SOPHIE will always be a legend. SOPHIE had like such a huge hand in shaping a lot of modern sounds in the electronic and pop spheres. Absolute legend. Always be remembered.
Yeah, the production that SOPHIE created is just some of the most innovative and certainly influential experimentation that's been happening in the past decade. It's really fantastic, and personally I think the album that we're reviewing right now, Oil of Every Pearl's Uninsides, is the culmination of all that, essentially. It combines all the ideas that SOPHIE was experimenting with into this incredible project. There's so many interesting details on this project, and there's so much to love about it.
Definitely, we'll be talking about this as we go through the track list, but the production on this album is absolutely incredible. This is perhaps one of the best produced albums of all time. There's so much detail, the sounds that are created, there's so much care into making them sound the way they are, the way they fit in with the other sounds. SOPHIE goes back and forth between creating these very atmospheric, overarching tracks. They have this great soundscape to them and absolute bangers. This album is full of incredibly well-made songs, track after track.
There's a very interesting contrast between songs like Pony Boy or Face Shopping. They're these like incredibly like abrasive, super like bass heavy, industrial sounding tracks, and these very atmospheric and calm tracks like the opener, It's Okay to Cry, or Pretending.
Pretending is like an ambient song.
Yeah, Pretending specifically reminds me a lot of like Death Consciousness in its sound. This very like dark, overarching, oppressive soundscape. Pretending specifically continually like builds throughout. It almost, by the end, I can see it as being like a track on like a space epic, like soundtrack. I think it's incredibly impressive, just the range of sounds played with on this record, but also how they all just come together to make a very complete sounding package. It's just really fantastic.
The album kicks off with the first track, It's Okay to Cry, which, thank you, because I did have been crying.
I remember when this came out, this is like probably my least favorite track on the record, and I think it's kind of taken on a different meaning after SOPHIE passed away. I've definitely enjoyed it a lot more now. It's a very comforting track in a lot of ways. Just Sophie is, talking about just it's okay, basically. Let it out.
It's a very tender intro, and I think that's a really great way to start off the record. Starting off the record with this track specifically, it's much more personal than any of the previous work that Sophie had done. Specifically, the product songs are very impersonal. Transitioning to this was, I think, very smart on Sophie's part. The track is very quiet for the most part. It starts picking up a little bit at the end, and then it kind of just throws you into Ponyboy.
I have to say, for anyone who had no idea what this record was, going into Ponyboy after It's Okay to Cry was probably a shock. Ponyboy is just it's a banger, but it's incredibly aggressive. You have just these almost blown out sounding bass hits.
It's blown out, but it's not overpowering, if that makes sense.
Yeah. You have these really great vocals.
We should mention, so Sophie is some of the vocals. Most of the vocals are a collaborator who goes by Cecil Believe. And there's a different collaborator on specifically Not Okay, which has Coda Banks.
Cecil Believe, for those who don't know, they're also known as Mozart's sister, another artist that Sophie often collaborated with. But yeah, so Sophie's lyrics and verses just have this insane sounding pitch shifting and distortion on them. So they're super deep, kind of demonic sounding almost. While Cecil's vocals on the chorus are these kind of very sweet. They're a very interesting contrast with the very bombastic sounding production. I think it works incredibly well.
I really think that the vocals throughout the track are great. The difference between Sophie and Cecil is very clear, and it's a really great contrast. And just the way they work in with the production on this track, these great bass and these kind of stabby synths. Wonderful track. Ponyboy is easily my most favorite song off this album. It's got a ton of great energy. It's super fun.
Very kinky as well.
Yes. It's very raunchy.
This is basically a BDSM song, essentially.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah. I guess just be prepared.
I wouldn't play this one in front of the church group.
Yeah. I just want to mention on the on the Genius lyrics page for Ponyboy, the top comment is "I'm horny and sad." But yeah, after that we get the song Face Shopping, which is another banger. It has a very similar energy to Ponyboy, but I'd say this song is a lot more industrial. It feels very calculated, which I think goes very well with the lyrical themes of basically making yourself look as good as possible using Photoshop. It's called face shopping.
It even goes farther than that and goes into just plastic surgery and the idea of creating a plastic version of yourself and falling in love with that idealized kind of version. Very, very interesting in that regard.
God, I also want to mention, the pre-chorus on this song as well with the na-na-na-na-nas. That part is incredible.
Just the way the na-na-nas build up and then transition into the do-do-do-do and then the bass hit. Oh, I don't know how to describe the do-do-do-do, but you know what I mean.
I also love how cold the vocals on the chorus are, and all the production on the chorus is super stripped back. And then just as soon as the chorus ends, you just get hit again with the bass and these odd metallic sounds. They work incredibly well with this song.
And I also want to shout out the bridge on this track. These very glitzy, starry synths on it, and how it kind of has this soaring sound compared to the very low and physical rest of the song.
So after that track, we go to Is It Cold in the Water, which is a pretty nice break, I'd say, from the much more aggressive parts of this record. This is a much more atmospheric. It's hard to describe, I guess, because this track feels glittery, I guess, is the word I'd use. It's very sparkly. You have these high-pitched, glistening synths surround you as you listen to it, with these very gorgeous vocals throughout, especially on the chorus with the repeated saying of "Is it cold in the water?" which just sounds gorgeous.
Definitely great job, Cecil, again, on the vocals on this track. Like, when I first heard this record, I feel like I didn't really appreciate the atmospheric tracks a lot. I definitely preferred the harder hitting tracks like Pony Boy or Face Chopping. But tracks like Is It Cold in Water have grown on me over time. The way the production is all assembled with the vocals on top, it's really, really great stuff.
I especially love how the synths, they're ever ascending.
They just keep going and keep repeating.
It sounds like they just keep going up and up, making this amazing feeling like you're rising, essentially.
Another track that has this great builds is Infatuation, where it starts out with just this simple piano. I know it's probably not a real piano, it's a computer synthesizer, but it just starts out with that simple instrument and just keeps building and building and building over time, adding in these percussions and the synths, and they just slide perfectly into the mix of this track.
Cecil's vocals on this track are like amazing. They're very gorgeous sounding. They kind of remind me of like Björk's vocals almost, with how like expressive they are, which I really love.
Definitely with the effects put on them, like the echo, I think works super well.
These like echoey vocals in the background that just kind of like surround you as the music continues on, I think add a lot to the atmosphere of this track.
This track, as far as like the atmospheric tracks on this album, I think this one's kind of a standout for me, and just how it builds that atmosphere.
Afterwards, we have the track Not Okay. It's a very short track. It's only just under 2 minutes. And definitely, I guess it's maybe the track on the record that feels a bit inconsequential, but I still think this has some very creative, interesting production. It's very aggressive again. You have these like buzzing synths all over it with these like glitching and like clipping vocals on it. It's really well produced, and it also builds throughout. It gets more and more intense as it goes along. Only I wish there was like more to it.
I can understand that. What I really like about this track is it's short, yes, but it feels very hyperactive for that short amount of time that it's there. It's constantly just moving, progressing, and there's just more and more stuff, like in every second, it feels. It'd be interesting to see if this track was longer, where it would go, but I think as it is, I still really enjoy it. After that short break into the aggressiveness, we take a big step back into Pretending. I would honestly call Pretending an ambient track.
The very dark soundscape of it reminds me a lot of Death Consciousness by Have a Nice Life. Super dark, like looming sounds that are created as like the track builds up very slowly over the course of like 6 minutes. Creates this very interesting break in the album, I think, that's very nice.
Pretending is probably my personal least favorite track on the album. I think the soundscape is interesting, yes, but I think the ideas used on this song are used better later when we'll get to Pretend World. Pitch shifted vocals on the back half of the track, last minute or something. That's like the only thing on this album that I'm not really a fan of how it sounds. It's definitely like an interesting soundscape, and I think if it built into something more or came from something, it would work better. And I think that does happen with Pretend World. And Pretending and Pretend World share a lot of the same sounds. So
after Pretending, we have Immaterial, which is a fucking banger.
It's another banger. It has this bouncy, like, xylophone beat.
It's probably the most just fun track on this album. Just so bright, poppy, and bouncy. Super fun to dance to. I love how expressive these vocals are on this song. They just, like, pop out. They work incredibly well with the beat. I also love how the song builds up over time a bit, gathering more sounds to put into it.
The track has a lot of momentum. It has this beat, adds in like the percussion claps. It's a very fun, uplifting track. Honestly, I wouldn't mind if like the album ended at that point. I feel like that would be like a really strong note to end on. But then we get Whole New World, Pretend Worlds as the next leg of this album, really. A 9-minute hybrid track.
I do just want to mention that, like, lyrically, the past few tracks kind of build on each other. A lot of it has to do with Sophie's transition into fully accepting themselves. You see, like, there's a very clear lyrical shift, I guess, whereas Immaterial is very accepting. You have, like, Infatuation, which is kind of about the obsession with figuring out who, like, you are as a person and exploring that. And then over Not Okay and Pretending, Sophie becomes accepting of who they are.
Immaterial lyrics are definitely about identity and accepting that identity, being okay with the identity of yourself and of those around you. You know, you can be who you want to be.
I'd say also the last track, Whole New World and Pretend World are also kind of about this.
In a more abstract way.
Yeah, it's like, look at all of these possibilities now that I've accepted myself. And it's really fantastic. This super long, depressive, kind of aggressive, alien-sounding track. There's a ton of super interesting sounds and noises used on the production on this track. You have, like, the super aggressive synths at the very start, and you start getting into more alien-sounding stuff. There's something that reminds me of, like, a laser gun blaster sound at one point, or there's, like, weird, like, metal clangs going on.
Yeah, there's, like, ringing sounds. There's all sorts of sounds going on. And it just all sounds so great together. Whole New World is, like, really, really catchy as a track. Whole New World dissolves into Pretend Worlds. Pretend Worlds just comes rising in and overtakes this Whole New World.
It becomes like a lot more abstract feeling as the track goes on. I think really starts to become very chaotic and noisy in a very interesting way towards the end.
I definitely agree. I think Pretend World, like, closing out the album, is a nice, calming way to end the album. I think the transition from Whole New World to Pretend World, representative of one, SOPHIE as an artist, but also this album as a whole. Really neat and closer.
So The Oil of Every Pearl's Uninsides by SOPHIE is an incredible record. It is one of the most forward-thinking electronic records of the past decade. There's so many creative, interesting production choices on this album, from the beautiful soundscapes of tracks like Infatuation or Pretending to the extremely aggressive and in-your-face tracks like Ponyboy and Face Shopping. I think there's a ton to appreciate here. Most of the tracks on this record are insanely catchy and engaging to listen to. I would highly recommend this album. I would say, like, not okay, which I think is just, like, maybe a bit unsubstantial. I think this record's incredible. Give this like a 9.5 out of 10.
This is an incredible record. It's absolutely something that, if you're into the newer sounds in electronic and pop, definitely check it out. It's very experimental. It's an incredibly well-made record. One, the production choices, absolutely incredible, and just the way everything sounds, so well done. There's fun tracks, there's atmospheric tracks, there's a little something for everybody. Definitely check it out. I love pretty much every track. Like I said, I think Pretending's kind of meh, but other than that, just amazing record. I'm at a 9 out of 10 on this album.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching this episode of Deep Dive into the Archive. If you enjoyed it, please consider leaving a like and also subscribing for more deep dives. You can also check out our other review series like Sound Bites. Tell us what you thought of this record in the comments below. I hope you have a wonderful day.